For years they've told seniors, just eat more protein and lift weights. But in Japan, muscle lasts longer through precision, not pressure. After 60, flooding the body may quietly do more harm than good. As a physician who has spent more than 4 decades watching bodies age from the inside out, not from textbooks, but from operating rooms and long hospital corridors, I need to say something plainly. What you've been told about normal aging is incomplete, convenient, and in some cases, dangerously wrong. I've watched sharp, independent men and women in their 60s and 70s lose strength, balance, memory, and confidence, not because their bodies were broken, but because they were following advice designed for a different era, a different metabolism, and frankly, a different profit model. Nobody sits you down and explains what really starts happening after 60. Your biology shifts. Hormones that once protected your muscles, blood vessels, and nerves quietly decline. Mitochondria, the tiny power plants inside your cells, don't retire gracefully. They sputter. Blood flow becomes sluggish, like old plumbing narrowing year by year. And the medical system often shrugs and says, "That's just aging. I don't accept that answer. I never have." Before we go any further, I want you to pause for a moment and engage with me. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. First city, a town, even a country. I read every single one because behind every comment is a real body, a real life, and a future that can still be shaped. Here's the truth I've learned the hard way. Aging is not a single switch that flips. It's a series of silent processes, slow, invisible, and reversible far longer than you've been led to believe. When those processes go unaddressed, the body enters a kind of quiet emergency mode. It conserves energy. It sacrifices muscle. It stiffens joints and arteries to cope. But when you intervene correctly, specifically, and at the right points, you can interrupt that cascade. This is not about extremes. It's not about punishing exercise or expensive supplements pushed by glossy ads. It's about understanding the few critical levers that still work remarkably well after 60, if you know how to pull them. Most doctors don't explain this, not because they're malicious, but because they're rushed, overburdened, and trained to manage decline, not reverse it. Stay with me. What we're going to cover can change how your body responds over the next decade. And it starts with understanding, not fear. Listen carefully. After the age of 60, the body doesn't fail loudly, it fails quietly. That's what makes this phase of life so misunderstood. There is no single moment where things go wrong. Instead, the body begins operating under a different internal rulebook, one that most people never see and almost nobody explains. Here is what is actually happening beneath the surface. The nervous system becomes more cautious. Signals from the brain to the muscles slow down, not because the brain is weak, but because it is trying to conserve energy. The body shifts into a subtle survival mode. Movements become smaller, reflexes soften, balance becomes less automatic. This is not a flaw. It is an adaptation. But when that adaptation is left unchallenged, it becomes a trap. At the same time, blood vessels lose elasticity. Imagine a garden hose left in the sun for decades. It still works, but the flow is reduced, and pressure behaves differently. Less blood reaches muscles, joints, and even the brain. Oxygen delivery drops. Nutrient delivery drops. Waste removal slows. The result feels like stiffness, fatigue, brain fog, or just not bouncing back like I used to. Medicine often labels this as normal aging. Biologically, it's something far more specific. Then there is muscle. After 60, the body becomes extremely efficient at breaking muscle down and remarkably reluctant to build it back up. This process has a name: sarcopenia. It sounds academic, but the reality is brutal. Muscle tissue is metabolically expensive, so the aging body trims it away unless it is given a clear, repeated reason not to. This is why strength, posture, and stability can fade even in people who stay active. What ties all of this together is energy, cellular energy. Mitochondria, the engines inside your cells, don't disappear with age, but they do become less responsive. Think of an old car that still runs, but only if you know exactly how to turn the key, warm the engine, and avoid flooding it. The modern lifestyle, even for health-conscious seniors, rarely provides those signals anymore. I've seen this pattern thousands of times. A man in his early 70s who still walks every day but struggles getting out of a chair. A woman in her late 60s whose scans look fine, yet her legs feel unreliable and her confidence shrinks. Nothing is technically wrong. and yet everything feels off. This is the dangerous middle ground where people quietly accept decline that is not inevitable. What matters now is not more effort, but the right signals at the right time. The body still listens. It's just more selective about what it responds to. In the next part, we'll begin breaking down the first of those signals, one that almost everyone overlooks, and one that sets the stage for everything that follows. There is a specific biological signal that remains remarkably powerful well into the 70s and even 80s. It is not medication, it is not motivation, and it is not intensity. It is mechanical tension delivered in a very particular way. When this signal appears, dormant muscle fibers wake up, blood vessels open, and the nervous system sharpens its communication with the body. This is where most people misunderstand strength and movement later in life. The aging body no longer responds to volume. Repetition alone barely registers. What it responds to is brief, meaningful tension that tells the brain this tissue is still essential. Inside the muscle are sensors called mechanoreceptors. Think of them as pressure-sensitive switches. In youth, they are easy to activate. After 60, they become selective. Light movement doesn't flip the switch anymore. But when tension is slow, deliberate, and controlled, these sensors fire. They send a message up the nervous system that says, preserve this muscle, reinforce this joint, increase blood supply here. I watched this play out with a 74-year-old engineer from Ohio. For years, he stayed active, walked daily, stayed busy. Yet his legs felt unreliable, and stairs became intimidating. His scans showed nothing alarming, but function told a different story. When his movement patterns began generating real mechanical tension again, strength returned in places everyone assumed were gone for good. Not overnight, but steadily, predictably. Here's the part nobody explains. When muscle fibers are exposed to proper tension, they release signaling molecules called myokines. These travel through the bloodstream like internal messengers. They reduce inflammation, improve insulin sensitivity, and even support brain health. This is not fitness culture. This is internal medicine happening from the inside out. Timing matters too. Earlier in the day, cortisol, the alertness hormone, is naturally higher. Muscles and nerves are more receptive. Blood pressure responds more favorably. In the evening, the same signal produces a weaker response. The body's internal clock, even in older age, still governs adaptation. Frequency matters as well. The aging body prefers consistency over punishment. Short exposures, repeated regularly, keep the signal alive without triggering excessive fatigue or inflammation. This is why sporadic bursts of activity feel harder and deliver less benefit than expected. This first signal lays the foundation. Without it, the others struggle to take hold. With it, the body begins reallocating resources towards strength, stability, and resilience again, and this is only the beginning. The next signal works deeper, at the level of blood vessels and circulation, where stiffness quietly steals vitality long before symptoms appear. There is a second silent process that accelerates after 60, and it rarely announces itself with pain. It announces itself with absence, less warmth in the hands and feet, slower recovery. A sense that energy doesn't quite reach the edges of the body anymore. This is not just poor circulation, in the casual sense. It is a change in how blood vessels respond to demand. Healthy arteries are meant to expand and contract. This process, called vasodilation, allows blood to surge where it's needed and retreat when it's not. The chemical responsible for this flexibility is nitric oxide. In youth, the body produces it generously. With age, production declines, and vessels behave more like rigid pipes than living tissue. When blood flow becomes less adaptive, muscles receive fewer nutrients, joints receive less lubrication, the brain receives slightly less oxygen than it prefers. None of this triggers alarms on a standard test, but function slowly degrades. Balance feels less automatic, endurance shortens, mental clarity wavers under stress. I saw this clearly in a woman in her late 60s who described feeling fine but smaller. She wasn't weaker in a dramatic way. She just took up less space in her own body. Her posture closed in, her stride shortened. What was missing wasn't effort or willpower. It was vascular responsiveness. The body still knows how to restore this responsiveness, but it requires a very specific signal. Blood vessels respond to shear stress, the gentle friction of blood moving along their walls. When flow increases in a controlled, rhythmic way, the inner lining of the vessels releases nitric oxide again. Flexibility returns. Pressure normalizes. Delivery improves. This is why sudden exertion often feels unpleasant later in life, while smoother, more deliberate movement feels strangely restorative. The vessels are not resisting movement, they are resisting chaos. They respond to rhythm and predictability. There is also a profound connection between circulation and the nervous system. When blood flow improves, nerve endings become better nourished. Feedback from the feet, knees, and hips sharpens. This is one reason balance can improve even without direct balance training. The signal clarity improves. Over time, better circulation reduces the background inflammation that quietly damages tissue. Waste products are cleared more efficiently. The internal environment becomes less acidic, less hostile to repair. This vascular signal amplifies the first one. Tension without blood flow is limited. Blood flow without tension is unfocused. Together, they tell the body that movement is not only possible, but worthwhile again. The next signal operates even deeper, at the level of hormones and recovery, where many people unknowingly block their own progress without realizing it. There is a third layer of aging that almost never gets discussed in a meaningful way, yet it governs whether the body rebuilds or quietly deteriorates. This layer is hormonal, but not in the way most people think. It's not just about testosterone, estrogen, or growth hormone levels on a lab sheet. It's about the environment those hormones operate in. After 60, the body becomes far more sensitive to stress signals. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, rises more easily and stays elevated longer. In small, brief bursts, cortisol is protective. Chronically elevated, it becomes corrosive. It interferes with muscle repair. It weakens connective tissue. It disrupts sleep architecture. And perhaps most importantly, it blocks the effects of other restorative hormones. Think of cortisol like an emergency broadcast system. When it's always on, no other messages get through clearly. I've observed this pattern repeatedly. Individuals doing all the right things yet feeling persistently drained, sore, or stagnant. Their issue wasn't lack of activity. It was that their internal chemistry was tilted toward breakdown rather than repair. The body wasn't refusing to improve. It was prioritizing survival. What changes with age is the margin for error. Younger bodies tolerate chaotic schedules, poor sleep, and constant stimulation because their hormonal systems rebound quickly. Older bodies are more precise. They still recover, but only under the right conditions. Deep within the brain, the hypothalamus acts as a command center, integrating signals from movement, light exposure, nutrition, and rest. When these signals align, it releases pulses of restorative hormones that support tissue repair, immune regulation, and neural maintenance. When they don't align, those pulses flatten out. Sleep plays a central role here, not just in duration, but in depth. The most restorative phases of sleep are when growth hormone is released. This hormone doesn't make people grow taller. It repairs muscle fibers, strengthens bone, and supports metabolic health. Fragmented or shallow sleep disrupts this process, even if total hours seem adequate. There is also a feedback loop between movement and hormones. Proper physical signals earlier in the day improve insulin sensitivity and reduce nighttime cortisol. This creates a biochemical environment that favors repair rather than inflammation. Over time, the body relearns a rhythm it once had naturally. One of the most striking changes I've seen in older patients isn't just improved strength or endurance, it's improved recovery. Less soreness, better sleep. A sense that the body is cooperating again rather than resisting. When this hormonal environment stabilizes, the earlier signals, mechanical tension and circulation, become exponentially more effective. Progress that once felt impossible begins to feel natural. The final signal ties everything together. It works at the level of identity and neural wiring, where aging either accelerates or slows dramatically depending on what the brain believes is still necessary. After decades inside operating rooms and clinics, one pattern stands out with unsettling clarity. The speed of aging is not dictated by muscles or joints first, but by a quiet, neurological decision. Long before strength disappears, the brain begins to renegotiate what the body is allowed to do. The brain is a prediction machine. It constantly calculates risk versus necessity. After 60, it becomes cautious. Movements that are no longer reinforced with clear, reliable signals get downgraded. Steps shorten, reflexes soften, balance corrections arrive a fraction of a second later. Not because the system is broken, but because the brain has decided those abilities are no longer essential. This is why decline often feels sudden, even though nothing dramatic has changed. The wiring is still there, but the priority has shifted. When the brain stops investing, the body follows. What reverses this is not motivation or reassurance, it's evidence. When the nervous system receives consistent, predictable input, it updates its internal model. Neural pathways strengthen, motor signals synchronize. The body begins moving with less hesitation, less noise, less internal resistance. I've watched this happen countless times. As neural confidence returns, posture opens, steps lengthen, and reaction time sharpens. Fear fades, not because it's challenged, but because it's no longer needed. This neurological recalibration is the hinge point. When it occurs, circulation improves, recovery accelerates, and strength expresses itself again. Aging slows, not by fighting the body, but by convincing the brain the body is still worth maintaining. When the brain updates its expectations, the body responds almost immediately. Energy that was being conserved begins circulating again. Movements feel lighter, not because strength has suddenly increased, but because signals are reaching their destination without interference. This shift starts in the nervous system. Sensory receptors in the joints and spine send clearer information upward. The brain no longer guesses where the body is in space. It knows. As that certainty returns, unnecessary stiffness fades. Steps become more confident. Transitions feel smoother. The body stops bracing for threats that aren't there. There is a quiet chemical change as well. Stress hormones settle. Blood flow becomes more efficient. Mitochondria stop operating in emergency mode and return to steady energy production. Repair processes regain priority over protection. What surprises many people is how interconnected the changes feel. Balance improves alongside sleep. Stamina improves alongside mental clarity. These are not separate wins. They are signs that systems which had drifted apart are communicating again. This is not the body being fixed. It is the body being allowed to function as designed once the brain decides it is safe to do so. When the body stops compensating, movement becomes efficient again. Strength shows up as control, not force. Inflammation settles, recovery accelerates, and tissues respond without resistance. Confidence returns quietly, as reliability replaces hesitation. This is not reversal through effort, but through restored communication between systems that were never meant to work apart.